allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Julie Orwin, President and Spiritual Leader of Congregation Beth Hagabot, is here with us for our invocation. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Major Kavanaugh, and hello to all of you, and hello to all the present. And we come to pray to the Almighty, or have a little chat with the Almighty, and thanking Him for this beautiful town that we live in. Thank you for the blessing of giving us all those mountains, for the fountain, and also for all of our elected town members. Because thank you for all of them. It's not an easy task that they have undertaken. We ask, please, to give each one guidance, knowledge, wisdom when they're dealing with all the decisions that they need to do. Also, today we pray for all the elected officials from our state and the elected officials in the nation, in our nation, to do the right thing according to your will. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Julie, for joining us and for bringing your relatives with you. I hope they've enjoyed Fountain Hills. Can we have a roll call, please, Bev?
Mayor Kavanaugh,
Here.
Councilmember Magazine,
Here.
Vice Mayor DePorter,
Here.
Councilmember Yates,
Present.
Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Councilmember Tellis,
Here.
Councilmember Leger.
Here.
Okay, thank you. First, we have a proclamation, and this is for National Mentoring Month in the town of Fountain Hills. Whereas across our nation, mentors steer our youth through challenging times and support their journey into adulthood. And whereas during National Mentoring Month, we honor these important individuals who unlock the potential and nurture the talent of our country. And whereas the dedication of mentors has helped countless young men and women succeed when they might have otherwise fallen short of their full potential. And whereas coaches, community leaders, tutors, and trusted friends are working to mentor today's youth to develop tomorrow's leaders. And whereas the contributions of these engaged adults extend beyond the lives they touch and have a lasting impact that strengthens our country and our future. And whereas 92 adults are involved in the mentoring program in Fountain Hills, and whereas 120 children in the Fountain Hills schools are being mentored. Now, therefore, I, Linda M. Kavanaugh, Mayor of the town of Fountain Hills, Arizona, do hereby proclaim January 2017 as National Mentoring Month in the town of Fountain Hills. And on behalf of the Town Council, hereby thank all of the mentors who have contributed to the lives of young people in our town. Thank you. I think we have some mentors here today, right? There they are, right back there. Thank you so much. We certainly appreciate everything that you do for our children and for all of the volunteer hours that you put into this. I know some of you have been doing this for many, many years, and I know that you've watched them go through the school system, some of them, from mentoring them from the time they were very little, and watched them go right into high school and on into college. Right, Roger? So we thank you for that dedication to our children. Thank you. Okay, and we are going to go right into the recognition of retiring Community Services Advisory Commissioner Greg Wu. Greg was not able to be with us today. Greg was on our Community Services Advisory Commission. He did volunteer for that, just like the many other commissioners that we have on our various commissions. And so we want to thank Greg for his dedicated service to our town. And we will be sending him his certificate of thanks. And next we have presentation on the council management form of government, an overview of the upcoming 2017 legislative session by League of Cities and Towns Executive Director Ken Strobeck and Deputy Director Tom Belshie. Hi, Ken.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Ken Strobeck, and with me is Tom Belshie. We decided to not do the split up tonight, but Tom, I'm giving him a buzzer, so if I make a mistake, he'll just, make that loud buzzing noise and correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm sure he will.
Yes. And if you have any questions that I can't answer, I'm sure that he can answer them. But thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you this evening. And let me make sure I get this correctly. Is that right? Yep. All right, and to talk about sort of the structure of government in Arizona, especially as it relates to municipal government, and then also to preview a little bit of the upcoming legislative session. As you know, in Arizona, we are a council manager state, and I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But first of all, let's talk about local government just in general. And I know many of you have seen this presentation multiple times, and we go into a lot more detail at the newly elected officials program that we just had a couple of weeks ago. But obviously, our authority and our statutory and constitutional authority comes from the governing documents of the state, the original 1912 state constitution and the Arizona statutes. So they create cities, towns, counties in the Constitution. But there are other kinds of local government. We have 91 incorporated cities and towns in the state and 15 counties. And I think, like many things in Arizona, we do things pretty efficiently, pretty on the slim side of things. I was looking up in some other states, and Kansas, for example, much smaller geographic area than Arizona. They have over 600 little cities, and Iowa has over 900. There are over 1,000 in the state of Texas. Here we are, Arizona, the sixth largest geographic area of the country, the sixth largest state. We only have 91 cities and towns and cover 114,000 square miles of territory. And I just also recently learned that the U.S. Census Bureau actually categorizes Arizona as the second most urbanized state in the United States. That's because we crowd almost 80% of the people onto 18% of the privately owned land and in 91 cities and towns. So we like to think of ourselves as a state that has wide open spaces and, we're the Wild West, but pretty much the government or the Defense Department or Bureau of Land Management or the state lands or tribal lands, that's what makes up the vast majority of our land mass in the state, and so we really are crowded together, particularly in the valley here in Pima County and the other 91 cities and towns across the state. In fact, half of the cities and towns in Arizona are under 10,000 population, so we really are a state of pretty small communities. And again, 15 counties. There are states much smaller than we are that have up to 100 counties. And I don't know how many Texas has. I'm sure that the number of cities they have, it numbers in the thousands. But there are other types of local governments, special districts, fire districts, water districts, hospital districts, stadium districts, those kinds of things. And they're all created by the voters, but they can only do one thing. They're statutorily created just to take care of one particular issue. A fire district only takes care of a fire service for a particular area. But overall, we have more than 600 of these local government subdivisions, but again, only 91 cities and towns. And cities and towns are what we call general purpose government. Unlike a special district that can only engage in one activity, cities and towns, by the Constitution, can engage in pretty much any activity that the citizens and that the council wants to engage in and that you want to pay for. The Constitution says that a city or a town can basically perform any function, get involved in any business activity that any other private business can get involved in. So it's pretty wide open. So when citizens come and ask for various services, then we can go ahead and do that, take care of what they're asking for. In fact, there are only 3 statutory requirements for an incorporated city or town. That is to provide for police, to take care of the streets within your jurisdiction, and to set up a town hall so that people of the community, the citizens of the community, can come and speak to their elected officials and let their wishes be known. So all the other things that we do, zoning and parks and even fire departments, all those things are discretionary and not required, and they vary from city to city. And we like to tell the legislature, don't make one-size-fits-all legislation, because we're not all the same. You know, some of us are in the rural areas, some are in the urban areas. We have different populations, different tax bases, and so forth. So all those 91 are very different. We also have a different structure in how we're governed, general law, cities and towns versus charter cities. The Constitution allows cities, any municipality incorporated as a city, to adopt a city charter, and it says that the city charter becomes the organic law of that city. Now, we're in court right now actually trying to sort of discover where that line is between what's local authority that's authorized by a charter and what's state authority, but in general, things that are of purely local concern can be put into a charter. So we have things such as some charters require a vote on all tax issues, a vote of the people. Others say have a term limits requirement. Others say that the elections will be done by ward or by district. All those things are purely local concerns, so they can go into a city charter that is created by the citizens of the community, voted on by the citizens, and essentially becomes a constitution for that city. But in general, day-to-day operational terms, people ask frequently, what's the difference between a city and a town? And it only has to do with how you originally incorporated under the statutes today. There are a number of references that say wherever it says city, it means town. Wherever it says a town, it means city, with the exception that only cities can adopt a charter. So we're all subject to the Constitution and to the statutes as passed by the legislature, and we spend a lot of time going over those statutes, and particularly in Title IX and Title 13, Title 35. Those are matters that really deal directly with the issues of city and town government. Again, we have these state statutes that deal with elections, with budget and finance, with land use, with the general plan that you're required to adopt, all those kinds of things, and there will be many other bills that will be proposed this year that will go into effect, and we have to be aware of what those are and abide by the outcome of the legislature. In terms of city government principles, we operate on a representative system, where you are elected members of the town council. We do not operate under a direct democracy system. Some of us remember the old, Ross Perot saying, well, let's put a computer terminal in everybody's home and everybody just votes on everything. That's not how our system works. We elect representatives, and you vote on behalf of the citizens of the community. You all come from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, education, experience, and so forth. You bring your collective wisdom, and you must act as a council. Not any one individual on the council can do anything by yourself. You have to act as a majority of the council. That's how business gets done. And of course, we always emphasize that it should be done in a professional manner and with respect and with proper decorum, because you're modeling the behavior that the audience sees. And whether they're watching on television or whether they're in the room, they want to see their business being done on behalf of their citizens. They want to see their business being done in a respectful and professional manner. So how you get things done is with compromise, with negotiation, with, again, getting a majority of the council. So any 4 votes on this council can do pretty much anything. It just takes a majority to be able to work and to make progress. You are, of course, public figures, and your life is not your own in many cases. If you go to Costco or you go to the gas station or whatever, people will approach you and ask you, what are you doing and why are you not fixing this, and I need this taken care of. So your time is not your own anymore. You have become a public figure. And we do operate under the principles in the official meetings of open government. And this is something we spend a lot of time on at the newly elected program, because it's very, very different from the way businesses operate. If you're a business, you can unilaterally make decisions about your business. And you can also meet in as many back rooms and as many smoke-filled rooms as you want. That's not possible when you're an elected official. You have to do all of your business and all your deliberations and all your discussions when you're moving toward a decision and taking official business. You have to do all that in open view of the public. And the reason for that is you don't own this enterprise. This enterprise is actually owned by the citizens of the community, and so they have a right to see your deliberations. They've elected you to make decisions on their behalf, but they need to be able to see all your thought processes and all the discussion that you have before you actually take a vote on matters. And in fact, we had somebody at the most recent newly elected program who said, well, how in the world then can we get together ahead of time and strategize about what we're going to do before we go to the council meeting? We said, that's the whole point, is you don't get to do that. And it was hard for that person to actually grasp that principle, but that's the way it works. And so then it moves into our structure of government, and there are several different models across the country for city government. There's the strong mayor, the weak mayor, the town hall form of government in some of the states back in the Northeast. But we operate in Arizona under the council manager form, and all of the 91 cities and towns have that as their organized principle. Not everyone has a town manager. Some of the very tiny ones have a combined clerk manager or somebody else that sort of serves in that function, but they're all organized under the council manager form. This emerged in the early 20th century as a response to widespread corruption, and this was a way to make government operate in an efficient, professional way that avoided favoritism and nepotism and cronyism and any other ism you can think of, and tried to get rid of corruption and to professionalize the operation of government. Started in the state of Virginia, and then the ICMA, which is the professional organization for city managers and county managers, began a few years after that, and they have very high ethical standards and behavior standards, and it's really an honorable profession that the business of city management. It's one that sometimes has a short shelf life, depending on, again, the will of the majority of a council, but there are other times when managers have stayed around for many, many years, and it works very successfully. This form of government is not a requirement under Arizona statute. It's allowed, and in fact there's a reference that says any city or town can adopt the council manager form, and all of them have chosen to do so just because of the way that it works and the fact that it is the cleanest and most honest and ethical structure for local government. Mayor and council, you believe it or not, are part-time. You're not full-time employees.
Really?
If so, then we'd have to have the minimum wage law apply to you all, and that would be very expensive. But but we all appreciate all the 91 city and town councils and the amazing amounts of time and work that goes into doing this. And like I said, you really are never without that. Once you've taken that oath of office, it weighs on your mind and you're thinking about it, whether you're at a restaurant or whether you're home in bed in the middle of the night and waking up and thinking about a particular issue. Just in a little aside, I had a former mayor tell me one time, who was later elected to Congress, that he said that being in Congress was about the easiest thing he'd ever done, because he said, I get to vote on all these controversial bills, billions of dollars of appropriations, and nobody says anything to me. He said, but I really felt the pressure when we had a controversial zoning decision on the town council, and then I had to walk out in the parking lot after the meeting and half the people were mad at me. And so that's where the real rubber meets the road. That's where the real pressure is. As far as their roles and responsibilities, I talked about this a little bit a few minutes ago, that you establish the principles, the guidance, you approve the budget, you set the goals for the community. You're the people who have the ultimate power as given to you by the citizens of the community through the elections process to govern the direction and the future of the town. You create the vision and goals, you provide public access to your deliberations, you execute the legal and statutory authority, and you hire people who are professionally qualified to manage the day-to-day operations of the city. So we're not like Chicago or other cities that have the brother-in-law and the cousins and the uncles and all that stuff is running all the various departments. In Arizona, all of our management side of the city business is to be done on the professional qualifications of those people. And of course, you're all subject to recall, which was again original part of our Arizona Constitution. The initiative, a referendum, and recall were principles that were in the original Arizona Constitution. And then just a few months after statehood, when we had a vote, it gave women the vote. We were the first state in the nation to have women's suffrage. Again, under the council manager form, the manager is hired on the basis of education and professional experience, and the manager then hires, fires, supervises the staff, and carries out the policy positions of the mayor and the council. And the manager does not make policy, but the manager executes the policy of the council, and the council does not get into the day-to-day operations of the town staff. Can you imagine how confusing it would be if all 7 members were going to different employees all the time saying, I want you to do this and do that. So you work through the professional staff when you have issues that come up that you need to address, and you're the people that need to be in charge of those issues, but you manage those through the professional staff, through the manager. And again, the manager, of course, serves at the pleasure of the council. Now, this is very similar to a corporate structure where you'd have shareholders and a board of directors. The board of directors would select a chairman of the board, and then that group would hire a CEO that would then manage the day-to-day operations of the corporate enterprise. So here's the similar situation with city government structure. The citizens have the ultimate power. They elect the mayor and the council, and then that you select a city manager, town manager, and then that person hires the various department heads and people to operate on the day-to-day basis. It's the most common form. Like I said, all cities and towns have this in Arizona. It's also the most common form of government for all municipal levels across the country, including cities, towns, and counties. And it provides for the separation of powers and sort of a check and balance, because there is accountability, and sometimes people who have just watched movies and don't really understand how the council manager form goes, they say, well, that manager has a lot of authority, a lot of control, and who keeps him in check? And it's the council that does that. And the fact that the manager is always accountable to the council and reports to the council on how he or she is fulfilling the goals that you have set for the community. So it provides consistency, predictability for the staff. It's open and accountable, avoids corruption, and again, like I said, the ICMA has a very strong code of ethics for everyone that's involved in the council manager system. So with that, I can wrap up the council manager part, but I was asked also to just give you a very brief preview of what we're expecting in the upcoming legislative session. I will tell you, it's going to be a very new legislature. With this year, we have a new Senate president, we have a new Speaker of the House, and we have 24 new freshmen, in addition to several people who are moving from the House to the Senate and Senate to the House. But we actually have 24 brand new people who have never served in the legislature before. And when you think about a 90-member body having 24 brand new members, that's a pretty high percentage. Of course, that is caused in large part by the fact that we have term limits and a few people who lost elections as well. So we have been meeting, the league staff has been meeting with a lot of the legislators, and our league officers, in fact, met with Governor Ducey yesterday, and I think we have a pretty good idea of maybe what the tone of the session is going to be. And of course, one of our highest priorities is to call for the repeal of Senate Bill 1487. And we told the governor that yesterday. We said this is overreaching, heavy-handed, completely unnecessary, because we already had a process when there's a question about whether something is a state matter or a local matter. We've always had, for 100 years, we've had a history of you resolve that through the courts, through legal action in the courts. The governor did not say that he would support full repeal, but he said he thinks there's room for reform. And we said, well, right now, our choice is either full repeal or do nothing, because we have court activities going on both at the state Supreme Court and at Pima County Superior Court. So the Supreme Court will make a decision on January 10th whether to accept the case or not from Tucson and from the league and from the other cities that have filed briefs. And if they say that they are not going to accept the case, then it'll go back to Pima County Superior Court, and we'll work through that process. But the other thing that I think will be a theme, and we certainly did get this from the governor, is economic development. He's very focused on business recruitment and trying to grow the economy here in the state and do that through streamlining regulations and making us have a business-friendly environment. We asked him about HERF and about infrastructure and about avoiding fund sweeps. It'd be great if they would do that. I just saw today that most of the $24 million surplus that's projected right now is already earmarked, 3 or 4 times over to go to various education and other kind of capital projects. But it would be great if they would actually do the HERF without doing sweeps this time. We also mentioned to the governor that we are extremely concerned about the PSPRS rates and what's happening with that. Even with the passage of 1428 last year and the new tier that will be created starting in July 1 of this year, the rates, if you've seen them for this year, for Tier 1 and Tier 2, are just staggering. We had the Hall case decided that is rolling back the contribution level of employees. That falls onto cities and towns. And of the $6.2 billion shortfall that PSPRS has, 70% of that lands on the backs of cities and towns because we have the largest number of employees who are part of that system. So that will be definitely something that we'll need to be watching to see how that plays out. Also, there was one unresolved issue that is the matter of pooling. And we have strongly advocated that we believe the new Tier 3 system should be all pooled together like the ASRS system, and rather than have the 256 separate local boards that we have under Tier 1 and 2 of the PSPRS system. We think that's a much, much better way to go administratively and really having everybody be part of one system. Another issue that will be very front and center this year is construction sales tax. We've heard this over and over for the last 4 or 5 years. There have been 2 reforms since the TPT simplification bill, and we have a task force that's working on that now, and I'm hopeful that this will be the last time that we'll have to deal with this issue for a number of years. It'd be great, and we are working with the industry as well as with other stakeholders to try to make sure that we get a good deal not only for cities and towns but also for the state when they're talking about going to only point of sale on materials. That's a huge loss not only for cities and towns but also for the state government. So we need to be constructing a system that keeps everyone whole. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions? Any questions from council? Councilman Magazine, is that?
Yeah. Thanks, Ken. I just have to say that your discussion of the council manager form was deja vu for me, since I was National Policy Director at ICMA in Washington a lifetime ago.
Wow.
I don't know if you knew Mark Keene.
Yes, I did.
Well, I
Yes,
think Mark
sir.
passed away a couple of years ago,
Yes.
living in Sedona.
Yes, exactly.
Part of our charter then was to try to get cities and towns to adopt the council manager form. And in those days, I was very surprised to hear that every municipality in Arizona has adopted it. Has that pretty much swept the country, do you know?
No, it hasn't, Councilman. I would say that it's more prevalent in the West and maybe parts of the Mid-South, Tennessee, North Carolina, that area. Not so much up in the upper Midwest in Ohio and that area, and certainly not in the Northeast. But it's more a feature, I think, of the West and probably the newer states. It's certainly prevalent in California and up in the Pacific Northwest as well. But, actually, I can't take any credit for that. I will credit my predecessor, 2 directors back, Jack Dabalski, who Tom knows, who used to travel all over the state and just be quite an ambassador for the council manager forum. So we can thank him for where we stand in Arizona today.
I do have a couple of questions. First one is you've mentioned a couple of times now court cases, and I know we're talking about the Tucson gun issue.
Yes.
That's one. Are there others that you're in court over?
No, we actually had one other case filed under 1487 that had to do with the town of Snowflake and a marijuana ordinance that they had. They chose to repeal that ordinance. The Attorney General dropped his investigation, so that one never got to court. The Tucson case is interesting because it's really not about the gun issue, although the NRA has filed a brief saying that they think it is about guns. But what we have argued is that this is simply about the process of 1487. And without getting too far into the weeds, we think the Attorney General has missed the boat by saying that the Tucson may have violated the law, but then all of their arguments at the Supreme Court say they did violate the law. And 1487 makes a distinction between may and did.
Thank you. Just one other quick one. You mentioned PSPRS, that 70% of some amount is going to fall on cities and towns. What was
Yes.
that amount?
It's the $6.2 billion unfunded liability for Tiers 1 and 2. 70% of the employees in the PSPRS system are city and town employees. So 70% of that $6.2 billion is falling onto cities and towns.
So is that a payback from 2011?
It's something that has been going on for a number of years. That unfunded liability has been building. It has to do with several things. I believe it's part because of this 256 separate board issues and the fact that there have been benefits given all over the state that really weren't necessarily proper to give. It hasn't been managed as a single system. Also, for years and years, the PBI was paid out. That's the permanent benefit increase, was paid out annually because of a formula, even though the system itself didn't have the money to do it. So that was all just piling up debt. And the other issue is that over time, the system has never achieved the earnings investment returns that they have projected that they would get. So every year they fall further and further behind. So that's why we were so vitally interested in creating this new tier and starting over with a clean new system and one that we believe could be better managed than Tier 1 and 2. Unfortunately, that legacy cost is going to be with us until it's paid off, but we just wanted to be able to stop the digging and not make it worse. Unfortunately, the Hall decision that came from the Supreme Court did make it worse for at least the short run.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from council? Any questions on this side? Councilman Leger?
Ken, thanks again. You know, I've heard that presentation at least 10 times. And
Yes.
it's well done. It's always a good refresher. I appreciate
you.
that. I'm not sure how specific you can be regarding construction sales tax revenue with respect to your task force. Without getting into the weeds, what do you see as your primary goal in doing that work?
You recall a few years ago, the issue was complexity, and the simplification was supposed to take care of all that. There have been several developments actually at the Department of Revenue, and one of those has to do with the fact that we now don't have a question about where anybody is anymore with the GPS and with the ability of your cell phone to tell you which jurisdiction you're in. That was a big question. And the other thing is, as of January this year, the DOR is taking over collection for all cities and towns, even the ones that were previously the self-collecting cities. So there's no question about who you send your remittance to anymore. You send it to one place, and that's very easy to take care of. So we think that those two big issues that were part of the original simplification bill have been taken care of by technology and by the consolidation to DOR. The other issues, though, have to do with whether there is compliance by the what we call sort of the MRRA, the people in the, not the handymen, the guys that are just going out and fixing a faucet, but the people that do minor repairs and remodels and those kinds of things. We think that it has caused a drop-off in your revenues. Just virtually every city and town has seen a drop-off in revenues. We don't think it's just because of the complexity of the system, although the main builders have told us it's complex. So what we're trying to do is to redraw that line between where you have to just pay retail on your parts and where you have to actually file a license, have a license and file returns. And I think if we can move that line down a little bit more and kind of go back to what was more like the old system, where you take the whole project, apply a percentage to that, maybe subtract the amount for labor, and then apply the local and state rate to that, and just remit that. It should be simpler, but then you take out the guys at the bottom end that are only doing the $20, $30, $50 jobs.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck to all of us. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Mayor, may I please?
Absolutely. Councilman Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Ken, I apologize for not being there, but being a general contractor and paying the transaction privilege tax for the last almost 20 years, what occurred in the past 3 years was probably convoluted the transaction privilege tax for builders more than it has ever been screwed up. I'm telling you, it's almost impossible. And I don't know who's on your committee to possibly help look at some alternative solutions, but it was better before it was ever touched than it is today.
Councilman, we
I'll
have
leave it at that.
we have heard that message loud and clear from a number of sources. So, like I said to Councilman Leger, what we're going to try to do is to go back to the better features of the simplified way it used to be, without having to drag in a lot of other people that would just be filing returns on very small amounts of business. But we certainly hear that, and we're very aware of that challenge and the complication.
And I see the problem being drawing the line between the small $150 faucet repair and a $12,000 remodel. That's where I see your problem is. But I appreciate you guys taking a look at it, and if you have any desire, I'd be more than happy to set in on some of the conversations.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, well, Ken, thank you, and Tom, thanks for coming. I appreciate your time here, but also I'm aware of all the work that you guys all do in the background, you and your staff, and all the extra help that you give to us, especially to the small towns. You work on PSPRS, the TPT, and also thank you for helping us out with the Airbnb so that we can now start getting our rental tax. And I look forward to the Monday call-ins where you're always there to update us on everything that's happening at the legislature.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. We
So
appreciate
thank you.
all the work that you do, too, and the fact that you're always on that call.
Well, yeah, it's a direct pipeline to
Right.
the senator, so it helps.
That's right. Definitely.
Well, thank you for coming to Fountain Hills.
Thank
It's always
you.
a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so now we will go on to, we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
No, we don't. So we go on to our consent agenda items. We have 10. And can I get a motion to approve as written?
So moved.
Mayor, second.
And roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor DePorter?
Aye.
Councilmember Magazine?
Aye.
Councilmember Leger?
Aye.
Councilmember Toles? Councilmember Yates?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
All right?
And Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Mayor 7-0.
Okay, our first regular agenda item is consideration of appointing 5 citizens to serve on the Community Services Advisory Commission, each serving a 2-year term beginning on January 1st, 2017, and ending on December 31st, 2018. I move to appoint Pat Canning, Jerry Gurrell, Jim Judge, Natalie Varela, and Kathleen Haynes to the Community Services Advisory Commission, to each serve a 2-year term beginning January 1st, 2017, and ending December 31st, 2018. Can I get a second?
Mayor, second.
And council discussion? No? Okay, then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
And I think Kathy is here with us. There she is in the back. Kathy is also an awesome volunteer at Town Hall. She already gives so much of her extra time to us at Town Hall, helping us out, helping Heather out with all the volunteer work and all the events that we have. And now she's taking on another volunteer job with our commission. So, Kathy, thank you so much. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Magazine.
Councilman Leger and I interviewed Kathy, and I just want to say we were blown away. We were really impressed with her background and all the things she's done, but all the things she can do in the future as well.
Great. Okay. Our best at Thelma and Louise. Any other comments? If not, we will go into number 12, consideration of naming the sculpture garden the Jerry Miles Sculpture Garden. Grady, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, before you is a request and consideration for naming the plaza area that's between the community center and the library and museum as the Jerry Miles Sculpture Garden. As many of you are aware, former Mayor Jerry Miles has been instrumental in a number of different positive contributions to our town. But the one thing that he's really most well known for by, I think, the community, because we see it every day when we're around the community in the parks and the Avenue of the Fountains and the community center, is his contributions in the area of the arts. Thanks to him and his vision, he was able to create a public art program for the town that is really second to none in the valley. In fact, we have one of the more unique ones where most of the public art that we have in the municipal art collection has come from either private donations or loans of the works themselves from the artists. Very little, if any, public taxpayer money has actually gone into actually acquiring public art into the collection. What we have before you tonight is a request for consideration of naming the area that is in the courtyard between the community center and the library as the Jerry Miles Sculpture Garden. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Community Services Director Mark Mayer, who has a brief little presentation he'll give on this with the details.
Thank you, Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council. Just to follow up on the town manager's comments, it's probably not surprising to any of you that we are here this evening to consider the recognition of Mr. Miles and his involvement in the public art program. That spans back at least several decades now. It's been a long-term commitment on his part. He was instrumental in the original master plan that was put together over 10 years ago. He was heavily involved in the revised plan that came out that also included the 1%, which has helped us fund a lot of the public art that's in place now. In summary, we have over 150 pieces of public art at this point and worth more than $1 million, which is very unique not only across this whole country, but certainly for a community our size. And I think it's to be recognized that his involvement was a lot to have to do with that success. Also, the 1% plan and the overall public art plan contemplated that in the first 10 years we would acquire at least 10 pieces of public art. Not to say we're at 150 pieces of public art, so not only was that goal met, but it was exceeded by a great deal. His contributions not only included literally contributions to buy some pieces, but often he made the difference with either holding a fundraising event at his home, which he hosted, or if the fundraising effort fell a little short, he would make up the difference. So many of the pieces that you see out there maybe weren't outright donated by, but they probably wouldn't be there if it were not for his continued efforts. So as I said, he's been involved in everything from the ongoing efforts, recognizing his many efforts, not only that, but also over many years. I included a section in the town's naming rights policy of the municipal sponsorship and naming rights policy, which in my mind permits us to consider this because it goes on to say whether a person is alive or deceased is permitted if an individual has made a donation of money and or services to the town equal to the cost of the facility. It's documented the permit naming, and then there's a highlighted section I included in your packet. I also included information about not only the site that the town manager indicated, but also the appearance. It is also then, if you look at the slide for number 3, which I'll advance to. Okay, maybe. Okay. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong. Arrow should work. Oh, okay. There is the site map. Here is a depiction of what the monument would look like. It is very similar, almost identical to, you may recall, the Cotillo monument was put out there, so we will match that both in the structure and in the coloration. And then that's the dimensions on the Cotillo piece. And then there's the language within the document itself. This is the language that would be potentially on the plaque that was given to us by Jackie Miles. So with that, I would answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Kidding.
Questions? I'd just like to read something. I know we have the biography here, but personally, knowing Jerry and being on the art committee and starting out like that, I would just like to read something about Jerry. You've heard a lot about Jerry's past accomplishments and his dedication to the town. I would like to add what I have witnessed as a former member of his art committee, serving with Jerry. I want to share what I know about Mayor Jerry Miles. Jerry spearheaded our beautiful art collection by not only an idea and a plan, but by donating the first two pieces to exemplify the type of renowned art that he envisioned for the collection. He donated Joy of Music, the magnificent piece that stands outside the community center, and the beautiful Precious Cargo, one of my favorites. Over the years, he's also contributed financially to many of the other art sculptures. This started a collection whose #1 priority has always been that any of the pieces donated would be by respected artists to create a collection that is museum quality. I would describe Jerry, if I had to and could only use one word, that word would be visionary. Jerry knew that with the right guidance, perseverance, and hard work, that he could create a Fountain Hills art collection that would be renowned worldwide. When I was on the art committee with Jerry, it all started with him looking out on the large open area between the library, museum, and the community center, the area that we are now considering naming for him, and seeing an area that was underutilized. I saw him persevere with plan after plan after plan until finally a plan was drawn that met his approval. Then with the coming of the centennial, it was a perfect time for construction to take place. As part of the plan, Jerry envisioned a future for the circle as you see it now almost completed, with benches and shade trees and art sculptures that surround and define the area. He envisioned a place for quiet contemplation or for reading or for the enjoyment of visitors to our town and for the school children to learn to appreciate art. That's why so many whimsical pieces, fun pieces, were added to entice the children to love art. This area that we are now considering naming after Mayor Jerry Miles would just not be, if not for his many years of never giving up, but pursuing his vision of an art collection that we could all be proud of, an art collection that defines us and sets us apart from all other cities and towns. You can see Jerry's hand in the rest of the art around town, from the magnificent African sculptures to the Native American pieces to the kid-friendly ones around the splash pad. Each piece in our collection is unique, and each tells a different story about the artist who created it and the donor who chose it. Having worked with Jerry for so many years and having been a witness to his absolute dedication to art and our town, and seeing his vision finally realized in our magnificent collection of over 150 pieces worth in dollars over $1 million, but in reality, priceless, makes me very proud to be here today to name this place the Jerry Miles Sculpture Garden. And now, with that, can I have a motion?
I thought you were going to make the motion.
Well, I could, yes. All right. If I can find it. Okay. I make a motion naming the, I don't have the exact words. Naming the, do you have it?
Yeah.
Motion to approve naming the sculpture garden the Jerry Miles Sculpture Garden. A second?
Mayor, second.
Okay. Any discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
And Jerry's with us, right here. Mayor Jerry Miles and Jackie.
All I can say is thank you. As you know, it has been a labor of love, and it's not over yet. We've got 150. I want to see it keep on going, and so it's going to. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. And we will be having a dedication ceremony as soon as everything is complete, as you saw there. And we'll all be there for it. So congratulations. And Jackie, thank you for all your help in getting this going with us. You kept a good secret too. Anything else? Not? We go on. Consideration of the design concept plan for the Fire Station Number 2 relocation project. Grady.
Yes, Mayor and Council, you recall that at the December 15th council meeting, we had a presentation by Chief Ott and also the Hunt Caraway team that were the architects for Fire Station 2, which is to be located at Fountain Hills Boulevard. And it was I thought the meeting went really well on that particular topic. However, during the meeting, it was very clear that Councilmember Brown had a number of questions that was probably not the appropriate forum to be able to get into the discussion on the details about the design, the location, some of the things that he was wanting to get more answers to his questions. And so at the request and direction of the council, Chief Ott and the staff team met with Councilmember Brown as well as the architects. He made himself immediately available on the Monday following that council meeting. And I'm going to go ahead and call on Chief Ott to go ahead and brief you on the meeting. And certainly Councilmember Brown is here as well, and I think you might have seen an email from him that indicates his support and that basically all the questions that he had were answered through this meeting. But with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chief Ott.
Good evening, Mayor Kavanaugh, Council. Happy New Year. We're here for the consideration of the design concept plan for Fire Station Number 2. As Town Manager Mr. Miller stated, at your direction, we met with Councilmember Brown on December 15th, and all parties agreed that the project utilized the site to its fullest potential. Councilmember Brown recommended sustainable and energy-conserving materials and processes as we move forward with the project. The next required submittal from Hunt and Caraway per the contract is the 60% drawings, and they're due next week. We will also forward those drawings to Councilmember Brown for his review and comments and meet with him as needed. And with that, Jonathan Schmidt is also here from Hunt Caraway if you have any other questions, and I'll be glad to go through the schematics. Our recommendation would be for concept number 4.
Okay. Questions?
Mayor, may I?
Yes, Councilman Brown.
Okay, thank you very much. Chief Ott, I thank you for your presentation. There was 1/5 additional concern that was brought up from a citizen, and that was the turning radius turning on to Fountain Hills Boulevard heading south. And I contacted you, and you immediately pointed out that on page C2 of 5 of Dave Montgomery's drawings that had been addressed. And I want to thank Jerry Butler, a shout out for Jerry Butler, for focusing on and looking at and having concern of being able to turn a fire truck onto the southbound of Fountain Hills Boulevard. And for the council members, I have fully vetted the 4 issues that I brought up. We had a great meeting, and I truly believe we've got, I have all of my questions answered, and we've got a great project. And I would like to, Chief Ott, I'd like to make one recommendation as far as the cosmetics. I've studied the plans carefully, and on let me get this in front of me. It's concept 1. We have a hip roof on the 2-story element on the back building. I like that concept, along with the front gables on the front building. And then on concept 4, I like not having the exposed gables on the bunkhouse, but the supports for the overhang being more or less just cantilevered beams, but I also really like the heavy truss figure on the front of above the the apparatus doors. I think that adds a statement of a heavy statement of balance. And other than that, I'd make a motion if I could, Mayor.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
So I would like to make a motion to move the concept plan forward with the recommendations of a hip roof on the back of the building as concept 1, and then using concept 4 for the front building.
Okay. Everybody follow that?
Yeah.
Everybody good?
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes. Do I get a second on that?
Mayor, second.
Okay, go ahead.
Dennis, elaborate on why you like the hip roof better. What about wear and tear maintenance?
Well, of course, the hip roof is more than anything. What was concluded, and one of my questions was, why do we have a two-story element on a single-story building on the back building? And the answer is, if we have a single-story building setting in the back of the heavy, tall building for the apparatus, the balance and the massing just doesn't work. It would look like we forgot what we were trying to do. And I like the idea, since we have two separate buildings, I like the idea of mixing the hip with the gables and having two separate elements in two separate buildings. If you look at concept number 2, they actually have that very concept, but they've taken the heavy gable off of the front of the apparatus structure, but they've left the exposed truss gable situation on the bunk rooms. And after studying it, I think that having that exposed heavy truss exposure on the front above the doors is a well-balanced feature for the building.
Madam Mayor, although aesthetically, and you builders do this, you build a beautiful piece, and then you're done with it, and then us maintenance guys have to maintain it. As you know, trusses like that are exposed and the wear and tear, I think they're all beautiful. I'm with you, concept 4, and that's why I second it. I think that's tremendous. Don't do the glass doors anywhere because the heat. That's my only concern, but aesthetically, all these designs are absolutely beautiful. But just taking that consideration of, rotting wood, dry rot, painting, etc. Unless you have some really cool materials that you're proposing. Excellent.
Well, that was my number one. That was my number one concern at our last meeting, and that was the first thing that Tamara and John addressed, as well as Chief Ott, and they gave me some fire station number 282 or 156 or something, that they have a fiberglass product that is now almost 20 years old that still looks new.
Great.
And if they hadn't have convinced me that they've used this product before, I would have questioned it. But they did address that.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Dennis.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Yates, we do plan on using cool materials, so it is a fire station.
Okay. Councilman Magazine.
Yeah, Jerry Butler spoke to me about the turning radius issue, and I wasn't clear. Has there been a change made to that, or did you determine that it was going to stay the same?
May I answer that, Chief Ott?
You could. I also have the visual up on the board of the turning radius and the egress out of the station, ingress, egress out of the station. So maybe we can two-part it.
Okay. Is that Montgomery sheet 2 of 5?
No, sir. It's the preliminary site plan that was in the PowerPoint.
Okay. Well, I apologize. You left your 11 by 17s with me, and actually on Montgomery's drawings, which is probably the same thing we're looking at, it actually shows the radius of coming out of that building and not getting into the northbound lane. Is that
Madam
what
Mayor,
we're looking at?
Councilman Brown, there is a slight outline of what that turning radius is.
Correct.
But if you could see it in Councilmember Magazine, what we have in Jerry's concern is that the width here is sufficient to be able to get the truck out. It's not designed for two-way traffic. So if the truck came out and turned to go into southbound Fountain Hills Boulevard, this median has been cut back. This is all asphalt now, and we have this whole area to make that turn. And the new turning radius on the turning radius on the newer fire trucks is much tighter than the old ones. And we feel very confident and comfortable that we can make that without any issues.
I'll pass that on to him. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilman Leger.
Thank you, Mayor. Are you comfortable with the recommendations that Councilman Brown has just put forward?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Leger, yes, we like that style as well. We kind of blended the concept 4, kind of more colors, exterior accents, as well as that building style, but that hip roof is very acceptable to us as well.
Awesome. My concern, I guess, was the same as Councilman Brown's, not using wood in this environment. So you're using a fiberglass product that is going to basically look like wood.
That's one of the options. Wood was not our primary. Our look is that of wood, but not a wood product. Okay. Something that's going to be sustainable and last well past the time that I retire and will not be driving past the station. But our goal is for the sustainability of the product.
I think any of us that own homes in Fountain Hills that have exterior wood have experienced nightmares with all that. One last question. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Traffic mitigation. Have you thought about that? What type of changes are going to be happening, from civil engineering perspective to the street, or some types of, and you and I have discussed this before, when you're coming down Fountain Hills Boulevard, there's that blind corner. Mm-hmm. Has there been any thought given to how you're going to address or remediate those concerns?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Leger, we have planned in the project that we'll put remote traffic sensors in. It won't be a traffic signal, but it'll be a warning system that would go in. It would be a wireless system that would, the one we're looking at is a solar-driven radio signaled. So somewhere up on, prior to getting to the driveway of the station, going both north and south, we'll have warning signals that as we're leaving in an emergency situation, those warning signals will be activated and alert the traffic in both directions.
All right, thank you. Thanks for answering the questions.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. One more?
I wanted to ask Vice Mayor DePorter's opinion, as his father is a retired fireman as well.
Well, it makes you an expert.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I actually got to share it with my dad. My dad got to participate in the design of a fire station at LAX when he was running the station. He thought it looked really cool. He knew that hanging hoses was different from how it was before. The layout was nice. There's no pole to fall down in the middle of the night. So he thought the design was well thought out. I think you need red doors. I think red doors are cool for the fire station doors, the bay doors, but it doesn't really blend as much as probably the natural colors. It looks fantastic. No poles, no fun.
Madam Mayor, Councilman DePorter, or Vice Mayor DePorter, once we do the dedication, we'd love to have your father there as well. So.
Okay, anything else? No? Okay, well, thank you, Chief, first of all, for, this presentation and the last one at the last meeting. And I know we all want to thank Councilman Brown for alerting us to all the questions. We rely on his expertise, and we know that we gave him a lot of extra work when you have questions, and he volunteered to meet with you, and that's great. Thank you, Dennis, for doing that, for all your hard work on this. We do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, now I have a motion and a second. And any other discussion? Then all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good
you.
evening.
All right, consideration of the Code Red Next Service Agreement with Emergency Communications Network LLC for a community emergency notification system in the amount of $12,757.81. And Grady?
Yes, Mayor and Council, before you is a request for a emergency notification system for our residents. A number of cities over the last several years have been moving towards these types of systems. I was a town manager in an area previously that would frequently have hurricanes and nor'easters and other weather events. And we had, at one point, a system that had a reverse 911 system, but it only had like 10 lines, and it would take like 5 or 6 days to notify every resident in town. The systems now are much more sophisticated, and at the time we were looking at moving to a system very similar to this before I left, and there were 2 systems out there at the time, and this was one that was considered. And basically, when we had the recent incident, you'll probably remember there was a shooter on the Beeline that was kind of having erratic behavior and coming towards our town. And I thought that this would have been really an ideal situation to notify people, stay indoors, that the sheriff's office is recommending that you avoid going out because of the situation. So these types of systems basically will notify people via text, social media, your mobile phones. There's even an app for this. It's called Code Red. The system that we're entering into a service agreement is called Code Red. And the staff and I will be involved in making the decision if and when we need to do this. I really see that this is really part of our overall strategy for emergency notifications for people. And as part of this, I just want to bring this up as well, that shortly after becoming town manager, I started working with our police captain and our fire chief, and we were assessing our emergency operations plan. And this was one area that we thought we could improve on. We've also have looked at our shelters that we have here in town. We have an intergovernmental agreement with the school district, which would include using the gymnasium at the high school for a shelter. But one of the things that we found as a weakness is that we don't have generators to back up either that or the community center. The community center is also identified as one. So we're going to be looking at some point. It's not. It seems like, well, we haven't really had an incident, but it happens, and you have to be really prepared and make sure that we've made every effort to be on top of our taking care of our residents when these situations occur. So in addition to this, you'll be seeing us come back in the future on something that's addressing the shelters as well. And I highly recommend this, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this point in time.
Councilman Yates?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Grady, awesome, great. I agree 100%. Line item budget, where are we?
This was not specifically budgeted at the time, so we're going to be taking it out of, I believe, contingency at this point.
Okay.
And then it'll be ongoing. It's interesting, we found out as part of this education process that the phone numbers that you receive from this, both mobile and landlines, actually come from the credit rating agencies. They tend to have the most up-to-date, because they all know where we all are, and they have the most up-to-date data. So as part of this, we will be obtaining that database, and then we are looking at an implementation being completed no later than the end of March. And again, this will be really truly only for emergency notifications. We won't be putting word out, when we're having events or anything like that. It's truly just for emergencies.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, so along the same lines, it's the 12-something up front, or is that the annual?
It's the annual cost for the first year's installment, and then it will go, it'll continue that way. And then I believe, Craig, it's in year 3 or 4, there's an additional $4,000 that we have to pay to update the listing, the telephone listing.
I believe that's in the contract has been written, so it's $12,000 going forward.
So it is, okay. We at one point, we didn't quite understand that. So 12,000 going forward is what this is, and this is a 5-year?
It's an annual contract renewable for 5.
Yeah, thanks. And if you have any other questions as far as the contractual part, Craig Rodolfi, our finance director, has worked very closely with us, along with our IT director as well. So if you have any questions, he'd be able to answer questions.
I just have one question about the chain of command with getting this out. Would it go from the captain to you, or would at times the captain could put it out, or how would that work?
So what I'm looking at is I'll be the one that ultimately makes the decision. So as part of the emergency operations plan, that will be. But really the person I'm going to be relying on, that will be my person who's going to understand and know this, will be the fire chief, who has the primary responsibility for carrying out the functions of our emergency operations plan. So
Okay.
he will be the one that will, we can even do this on our phones, and you know, you can do a circle with your finger and identify the area if you need to, like maybe there's you know, emergency road closures due to flooding or something like that. We could do that, and we could do this from our own homes without actually having to be actually on a personal computer. It's very sophisticated with what they have now.
Okay. Councilman Magazine?
Grady, will there be any community-wide tests of the system to make sure it works?
We will be doing that as part of the implementation, and we will notify people that this is only a test at the time. But we want to be very careful that we don't, you know, overuse it. Or there's been some cases in Arizona and elsewhere in the country where they have tried to use this as just kind of like a notification system and not focus strictly on emergency, and then people become jaded and they don't really pay attention to it, or they get frustrated and they don't want those messages. So we've kind of learned loud and clear that you really want to only use this for emergencies. But to your point, we definitely will be doing a trial test to make sure. And what we might do initially is a sample group. We might utilize, for instance, the town staff and council, and then we might go to a broader group just to see how that works.
Councilman Leger?
Thank you, Mayor. Along the lines of Councilman Magazine's question, community education, is that something we're responsible for? Is that something the vendor's responsible for?
So the town will be responsible for that, and we will be doing that as part of the newspapers, working with them, our website. We're also going to have an opportunity for people to opt out, because people might not want to, you know, participate. The other thing is the app that's out there, they have a very sophisticated feature that if you have the Code Red app and a community has Code Red, or people visiting us have the Code Red app, they will get notified if they happen to be within our geographic boundary and the notification goes out about an emergency. Those people that might be visiting that have the Code Red can be notified as well. But the key to your question is, yes, we will be getting the word out to the public about this as we start to roll it out.
How about coverage? I mean, what are we looking at here? You're not probably targeting 100% of the folks. I mean,
They've given us every indication that it looks like we will get close to 100%. And I think that's really, I mean, I take that like seriously, but I can't believe that they would have 100%. I would think it's probably closer to probably 90%. And then we'll have people, they can opt in as well, or if they want to choose their notification, how they want to be notified, they can either get text messages or you know, things like that.
and one last question. I know that the high school has a system that they utilize, because I've received messages when my daughters were in school over the years, anytime there was an incident. Are we familiar with what type of system they use, how successful they've been? Is there any way of piggybacking onto the type of system that they're using?
Craig, do you remember, we heard that the school system has one, but I think they have a traditional reverse 911 system.
Yeah, they do.
I'm not aware that we contacted the school district for the information on their system.
The key is, you know, we basically, the way that this is structured is we're charged based on the number of calls, I think, that we would
Correct.
make on an annualized basis. But under the $12,000 that we pay annually for this, we believe that we have sufficient to cover all of the potential uses that we have during the year. We would want to make sure that we probably keep it really for our own use, since they have their own reverse 911 system. And my understanding is, having worked with another school system in another state before, they had a reverse 911 system along like school snow days and things of that sort. And they basically kept theirs. They had all of their database was updated based on the current students that were attending. So that's how they would do that every school year, at the beginning of every school year.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, any other, okay.
Mayor,
Councilman Tolis?
thank you. You know, I think it's a great concept, and I think that your thinking in regards to making sure that we do our due diligence to notify the public in the case of an emergency is a valid concern. I just feel that that with social media right now, that there's tools out there that we can utilize for free and have residents opt in. And for instance, we have this social media with Facebook and Facebook Connection that thousands of people in Fountain Hills are on. And this is a pretty tight-knit community, and I can tell you that when something goes on there that's an issue, whether it's the water main break in Sunridge Canyon this past week, or whether it's an issue with vandalism in one way, shape, or form, we're notified pretty quick. And I just feel that as much as a $12,000 expense on a yearly basis with the budget that we have, we come to these meetings, and every month, if we're allocating $15,000, $20,000 for this and that, it adds up. And I just feel that there may be another way that we can accomplish what you're trying to do, but try to be as fiscally conservative as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Councilmember, and I understand it. The one thing that we have found just with the town is that we don't have the ability necessarily to control the message with the Facebook connection, and that's one of the issues. I think the council, when we went through the most recent budget process, they wanted us to have more, do more in the area of communications and the residents, and I think this is one of the goals that you guys have set. So we kind of went on that track. But I hear you, and I think that there are other alternatives for sure, and I don't disagree with you on that. But this is one that we have, I think, the control of the median and also the message.
Okay, yeah, and I just commenting on what Councilman Tola said, you know, there are a lot of people who are on Facebook, but people my age and older are not. They do have smartphones, they have, you know, brought themselves up to that level. I know someone who just got a smartphone. She had a flip phone all these years. And a lot of people don't check Facebook as often as younger people do, so they would be missing a lot of the emergency messages. I think someday, yeah, everybody is going to be tuned in that, you know, messages, they're going to want the messages to come right through, you know, to their phones from their Facebook accounts or whatever other accounts. But I think right now we have a lot of older people in Fountain Hills who just don't do that. So, and they might be the ones who actually need more of the emergency notification than younger people.
Mayor, and along the lines of what you're saying, when you look at, and we've talked about this a lot, right, the average age of our folks in town here. The other side of that, too, is, you know, I often get messages, and there's so much fake news out there, and I'm not saying the Connections is fake news, so I don't want to have people come down on me on Connections about that. But when you comes to things that we'll be looking at here that are going to be very, very serious events, the source is very important. And is it credible? And, I share Art's concern as well in terms of the $12,000. That's why I was asking if there's a way to piggyback on the school system, but I recognize it is a separate system, so thank you.
Any other comments? Yes?
Along the same lines of the discussion, maybe I'll support this regardless, but maybe let's reach out to Dr. Sweeney and just find out. Maybe they can opt in on our end and say something. The 911 system, I've been with parents where they get a text and it's pretty vague and they, well, you know, and so they may be ready for an upgrade, and depending what the cost is, if they may just food for thought.
It's a good thought, and I will, I get together with Dr. Sweeney periodically, I'll bring this up, and basically our current contract, the way it's structured, is really geared for us, but maybe just the incremental increase would not be that much more for them. So we'll definitely look at that. So it might share or reduce our cost.
Okay. And there's no other council discussion and there are no speaker cards, then I'm looking for a motion
Mayor, so moved.
and a second. Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor 6-0.
Okay, the next,
He's left our meeting.
okay, yeah. Councilman Brown did mention that in the area that he is, very often the calls drop off. So he wanted to make sure we knew that he did not hang up on us. Okay. We have no direction to staff, so summary of council requests, recent activities. I just have one because it's actually been kind of quiet with the holidays. I just had one meeting I wanted to tell you about. I had a meeting with the East Valley mayors today. Attending were the mayor of Scottsdale, Tempe, Mesa, Queen Creek, Gilbert, Chandler, Cave Creek, and Apache Junction, and also President Delbert Ray from the Salt River Maricopa Indian Community. Besides just chatting about recent developments in our towns and cities, we did discuss the upcoming legislative session and some of the bills that we will be watching. We talked about continuing with strong communication with our legislators and with each other. In Fountain Hills, we are a lot more fortunate, I found out, than most of the cities, in that Senator Kavanaugh lives here in the town, and State Representatives Lawrence and Ugenti Rita are very accessible to us. We mayors are looking forward to a good legislative session, and especially looking forward to working together as a team. So that's all I have, and just want to wish everybody a Happy New Year. Okay?
Happy New Year.
Okay, then a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
and all in favor of that? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.